All right. First of all, thanks for the invitation and for the introduction. I'm honored to be here and have the opportunity to speak in front of you. And it's a very important workshop and important topic. And to bring it closer, the center Überleben. Überleben, Dr. Buser said it before, it is like to survive, you could translate it. To myself, I'm a social worker. I'm working for like 2.5 years in the outpatient children and youth department or adolescent department in the center Überleben. And in terms of content, I will give you a brief overview about the center Überleben to set it up in context. And then in the later part, we go into the actual work in the outpatient and children and adolescent department, as well as some day-to-day insights of how we work, especially in the very beginning stages of the work we're doing at the center. To put it short, I will not read the whole text. The presentation is up for you if you need it afterwards. The Center Überleben is a nationally, internationally institution who works for survivors of torture and war violence. We're working with men, women, children from around 50 countries, with all the different hotspots around the globe, all the new arriving hotspots like we talked today, but also all the old hotspots who are still sadly active right now. So for example, Afghanistan, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and so on. What we're doing at the Center Überleben is we give those people who arrive a medical and psychotherapeutic as well as social work and integrative support. So it's a combination of different professions who are working together for the people who are getting a treatment in our center. But as well, beside the medical and psychotherapeutic support, we also try to do like integration and give professional qualification for people to open up their chances for a safe stay here in Germany when they come as a refugee from different countries because of war and violence. In terms of vision, it's a vision of one word or a word, and with the dignity of human life and the human rights of each and every individual are guaranteed, regardless of ethnic origin, religion, gender, social status, or political conviction. The goal of the Center Überleben is pursued a world free of violence. As high as it sounds, it's a good goal, I guess. To give some context of the history, just a brief point. It was founded in 1992 as with the name Berlin Center for Torture Victims, or in German Behandlungszentrum für Folteropfer, BZFO. 5 years later, there was the founding of the Überleben Foundation for Torture Victims and the cooperation with the Center for Migration and Refugee Services. Maybe before, like the Center Überleben is based in Berlin, Moabit. The founding of the non-profit organization Catania shortly after the combination, and in the end, 2016, the change of the legal status from BZFO to the Center Überleben, how it acts and performs up until today. The quick profile, beside the very first part where I had like a small overview, is the help of torture after torture and after the experience of violence in wartime, rehabilitation, help after domestic and sexual violence, applied research in the field of trauma and violence, documentation of human rights relations, and as well as like international cooperations for training external colleagues in Germany, but also in an international scale. To give a quick overview of some of our departments, the Center Überleben has around 140 people who are working there, and on and off 40 to 60 people who are working there part-time, mostly as interpreters or school teachers, language teachers. So it's not that small anymore. We have at the top 5 departments who are like in the clinical part, for example, the outpatient department for adults, counterpart to my department, the outpatient department for children and adolescents, as well as the day clinic, for example, who are working way more in the group settings instead of us who are working in a one-on-one setting. Later to this, a little bit later in the presentation. What's also important to know would be, for example, the Department of Transcultural and Traumatic Stress Studies. So it's a research department who are researching and creating diagnostical instruments which we use in our work and therapeutic work in the Center Überleben, but also around the globe, which is very important for us because with like standardized documentation in instruments in a therapeutic setting, we get statistics and actual numbers because we need those statistics and numbers to raise the voice in a political level and raise the voice for people who have none or not barely no voice. So it's a very important part of our work in the Center Überleben as well on a political level. As well, I will not go into deeply, but we have a special library, which is one of its kinds in Germany with around 35,000 documents about the very specific subject of torture and war violence. It's highly specialized, which we are very lucky to have in our department or in our Center Überleben as well, which is open for everyone, but as well especially open for the people working there. It's a great resource and also a great way to preserve the history of all this war violence and torture. Briefly, some numbers before we get into the day-to-day work as well. It's patients treated in 2022. The numbers for 2023 aren't up yet, and it's only focused on the clinical departments. We see with around 460 people who were treated in the year 2020 or new treated. It doesn't count all people who are still in a therapeutical setting. And we have like 66% at the Department for Adults, 11% at the Department for Children and Adolescents, and 23% at the day clinic. The numbers aren't really a good indicator for the demand, more an indicator of how big the different departments are. For example, the Department of Children and Adolescents, where I'm part of, is a bit smaller in comparison to the Department for Adults, but it's also very important to know that the actual therapeutical work takes most of the time way longer when you work with children. So we have children at our departments who are getting support for 2, 3, or up to 4 years or even longer. So there's not that much of fluctuation each year, which explains the bit lower numbers. To give a view, like a brief overview about the country of origin of the people, of the clients we're working with, it's, as you can see, one quarter is Afghanistan. It's always a very big quarter of the people arriving us from 2016 up to, of course, 2022, with the take of the Taliban again. It will be not changing in the foreseeable future, I guess. But also Syria, Iraq are still big countries of origin for us. And then you get the smaller numbers. For example, also Ukraine with 2%. Keep in mind, it's also the numbers of 2022. And it's also important to know that, for example, Ukraine, with the full force attack of Russia, there's a lot of very specific support or projects for help of Ukrainian people in Berlin. So it takes some time for them to penetrate the first layer of support to actually arrive at the Center Überleben, which also explains why some numbers are perhaps lower than one could expect. So far for the overview. When we come to the actual work, it would be worthwhile to give a brief overview of my department. We have 3 psychotherapists, 3 social workers, 1 psychiatrist, and an open pool of language and cultural mediators of various languages, who is acting as interpreters for all the sessions. I highlighted this because it was also here in the presentations before, briefly. For us, or for our work, it's very, very important to have the right cultural understanding and have the right language, because what is one of the key points for Center Überleben, all our sessions, therapeutical or social working, are done in the mother language of the person who is getting the treatment. So we are very fortunate to have a big team of 40, 60 language interpreters. We not only call language interpreters, but also cultural mediators, because even if we have a broad knowledge about different cultures, we will never fully understand a culture as good as one who lived there or has like an origin in this country. So very fortunate, and this is also why I highlighted it. Those people are like actually enabling our work. It's like, can't stress it enough. It's super important for us and really, really good that we have those people who are working always in the mother tongue with the person who's needing help, which goes hand in hand because we work in the requirements for our patients. We have a point of like insufficient German language skills for therapy in German, which means we are working with clients and patients who are very new in Germany or in Europe in general, who have perhaps like 2 or 3 years of flight until they arrive in Germany, incapable of having learning German because of broad reasons, and they would have no way to reach a therapeutical help. unless there's like this setting where we have the mother language. And it's also important to know or to say this is not part of the German health system, so it's an extra. It's something we have to pay ourselves. Like the Center of Überleben is 50% funds through the ministry and 50% funds through private donations, which allows us to actually have those interpreters and work with them in a one-on-one setting. The age range is, for children and adolescents, so 3 to around 21 years old. Most of our clients are in the age of 15 to 17, who are coming as unaccompanied refugees, but we have also children who are in the age range from currently, I think, 5 to 9, sometimes even a bit younger, which are most of the time coming with the family or one part of a family. It's very rarely that someone arrives in Germany as an unoccupied child in the age range of 3+. Which is also important, and this is why I highlighted for our work, is there can't be an immediate threat to asylum or immediate forced deportation. Because as soon as we start to work with the client, especially in a psychotherapeutic setting, you have to have a little bit of stability. I'll come to this because there is no stability in the real sense of the word. But if there is someone who is really close to forced deportation back to his home country or somewhere else, it would be harmful to actually start a psychotherapeutic progress. It's a symbol or like a picture about how we work with the patient or the client in the middle, and the 4 different professions around it. So psychotherapist, social worker, psychiatrist, and the language and cultural interpreter. We're working in a one-on-one setting. Each client who's coming to us has like one psychotherapist and one social worker. We're working hand in hand as a team together. We of course always try to get also the same interpreter for all the sessions. So there's like the opportunity to build like a bonding work relationship. And because of the problems I'm coming to right now, it's important to have like a simultaneous focus on therapeutical, social, and medical problems, which is supported with the multi-professional team aspect we're trying to bring in the Center Überleben. This, for example, is one of our therapy rooms, kind of cleaned up, so it's a good overview about it, where we have sessions with a football table, we have a chalkboard, we have a sandbox for play, because all the therapeutical settings are in a verbal or non-verbal action, depending what is important for the kids, how we can work with them, how they're acting, but also because we have people or clients from the adolescent age, where we perhaps don't need chalkboard anymore. It's just everything, and we try to have like a safe setting, which we create in a trauma-focused therapy safe setting with sensitized language and cultural mediators with their own vision after each talk, so that all people who are involved in the work with children and adolescents who are like severely traumatized. We're talking about children who have a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. We'll not go too deeply into the difference between the traumas, it would be an own presentation, but we see the complex PTD, PTSD, especially often by young children when there's a ongoing, repeating traumatic event, especially in the developing stages of some other person, which is very often happening in the brain of a child. Of course, when it's developed, all the systems, because those trauma situations have a different impact on the nervous system. So it's a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. In this room, we do like the weekly appointments. It's once a week, twice a week, maybe once a month. It really depends what kind of stabilization the person needs, and of course, how it can work in our setting. To get some insights into the practical day-to-day work, I tried to figure out some special characteristics and commonalities and symptoms in trauma work with children and adolescents. So I think most of you heard about different symptoms of trauma. What we often see, it's not all of them, but a combination of them is pretty much always a given, is things like the shattered assumption, the alienation, the mistrust, the low self-esteem, the feelings of guilt, depending what you saw, what you had to survive through, when you saw someone dying, also when you are pushed out of your country and you have to leave your family back, which can push a lot of guilt, or the persistent self-perception of being helpless. But especially, this is why I highlighted it again, when we work with children, so younger people under the age of 10, there's the dysregulated emotional variation, the missing understanding about what happened, and especially for children who perhaps have no visualization, no visual representation of what happened, of the traumatic experience, because they are too young, or they didn't saw it themselves, but they took part of it because they heard it, or the parents were traumatized. It has an effect of the child, of course, as well. And the missing psychoeducation, also depending on which country someone is coming, what's perception of psychologic or psychoeducation he has himself, because, for example, if we're talking about Afghanistan, it's a huge country, and it's a huge difference if someone is coming from a main city, maybe from a landscape origin, which is more outside, where there's a different Bildung, different kind of knowledge about psychoeducation. So these points we see quite often in the work with children, and is one of the main topics, the dysregulated emotional regulation. So psychoeducation for a child is, of course, important, but also, as you can imagine, very different from how you would do psychoeducation with someone who is perhaps 15 or 18 or 21. Those have a different understanding why perhaps things you saw or heard have an effect on yourself. But for a child, it's very difficult to grasp this concept. So this is one of the main topics we are facing. The problem, what I said before, is the lack of fulfillment of human needs. That is always a given, because even when the people arriving here, I said it before, we're working with people who are for maybe a few months or a year here in Germany, they're still seeking their asylum, they didn't have a response so far. There's a very, very big missing of the fulfillment of the basic human needs, like based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the security of, do I live here? Can I stay here? Do I have to go back again? Or social needs in terms of loss of partners, of friends, of love, and the basic human needs in terms of what can I eat? What can I eat tomorrow? How can I sleep? Can I sleep in peace? Or is there a lot of noises because I have to share the room with a lot of families? All those basic needs are rarely fulfilled when we start to work. And normally we say we wouldn't start with psychotherapy if those basic needs aren't fulfilled, because it's very difficult for the human minds. But because we see the importance of early working with those in a psychotherapeutic setting with the children, we still start to work even there's a lack of fulfillment, because if we would wait for this, it could take like years. Everyone who knows the German asylum system in Germany knows that it really can take up to 3 years, 4 years until you get your that real answer where you know, okay, can I stay? Under what conditions can I stay? So if you wait till then, it would be way too late. So this is where we start working, even if those needs aren't really fulfilled. Which is a problem, because when we're looking back to the work, especially with children, with a very special need, special need of empathetic adults, perhaps, and perhaps the adults can't be empathetic because they are severely traumatized themselves, or the understanding of their own feelings, which can't be explained because, again, the parent who's with them or the youth welfare system can't really give them this kind of knowledge. The need for education, children have the intrinsic need for knowledge, for like acquisition, for intellectual stimulation, which is all pretty much stopped perhaps for years, where they have to flee the country until they arrive in Europe or in Germany. And even then, when they arrive here in a safe setting, there's a lack of schools, language schools, of support in the early stages. So all the very basic special children needs are rarely stimulated, which makes it very difficult. As well as facing external challenges or exclusion factors, for example, a new culture where they arrive, a new language, perhaps racial discrimination, loss of stability, and a lot of different external factors who I know, I guess most of you have a few in mind, coming together, which creates a very difficult environment for us. It's a very difficult environment for a trauma-focused therapy, because normally, as I said before, you need some kind of stability to actually start working. Otherwise, it would be a destabilize of the mind and the person itself. So we have a strong emphasis on the needs-oriented work by all professions. So we really have to see, okay, the person is here, is arriving, perhaps we have a broad idea of what would be perfect, but we have to see, okay, what is the immediate thing we can do for the person? Is it something social work dependent, like legal status, lawyers? Is it something medical specific, like helping with a sleeping disorder or something like this? So we really have to see when the person's coming, what can we do? And this is why we're working at Center Überleben in a multi-professional team, very close. We have not like one psychotherapist who is doing psychotherapy, but everyone is doing everything together and is in a close communication about what is happening as a next step. So if I try to boil it down and simplify it, you can say at the beginning, we have like the stabilization and psychoeducation, the medical support, the social work, like social counseling, through youth welfare, claiming benefits, like the bureaucracy system in Germany, to lead through it. All this under the guise of creating a relationship, a work bond, which allows later on to actually start a trauma-focused therapy. To reach this point, it can take 6 months, it can take 1.5 years until you really start a trauma-focused therapy, because as I said before and repeated often, the baseline of stability is nearly never given, even when you're arriving here in Germany. So to get like this kind of relationship, this baseline of fulfillment of needs, where am I living? Can I bring my family? Yes or no? How can I do it? How can I reach them out? Can I do like activate the Red Cross and try to search them in my home country? Stuff like this has to be like done before, which is why social work is also so important in this specific context, before you actually start the trauma-focused therapy. And I will not go too much into the different kinds. We work mostly cognitive behavioral therapy, like the NETS, narrative exposure therapy, Lifeline, EMDR, PMR, all different kinds of therapy which you can use. We also use before we actually start the trauma-focused therapy. But it's important to keep in mind that if you really simplify it, this is the very beginning of the work which we're doing, which can take up to a year. And then, as said at the beginning, most of our clients or patients stay for 2, 3, 4 years until they're like stabilized enough to actually, get cut the loose to us or cut the line to us, and are free of our support or help system. So far, thanks for your attention. If you have a question, you're welcome.